Welcome to If Prices Could Talk, the podcast where we dive into the art and science of pricing, sales, and negotiation. I'm your host, Tracy Dent. Join me as we explore strategies and current events shaping the future of pricing power in B2B, featuring insights from industry leaders and subject matter experts. Let's jump into today's conversation. Well, let me set up our introductions just for people listening. So we've got Adrienne Meyer on the podcast today. Adrienne is the CEO of CSIA, which we'll talk about what you do as a company. And then we've also got Brian Doyle here. Brian is the CEO of Holden Advisors. So we have been members of CSIA at this point for a year or two, right, Brian? You've been to
Yes.
the conference and we were like, let's have Adrienne on and talk a little bit about what you do and the membership and all of the things that come with that. So I think a good starting point. Can you tell us a little bit about what CSIA does?
So it is the Control System Integrators Association. And what Control System Integrators are, since I know you have a pretty wide listening audience, are the specialized engineering firms that connect the brains of a factory or industrial processes. So they help spec out and architect everything that helps the factory think and process information. They make the robots talk to each other. But so we've been in existence as an association for over 30 years. Our core mission is to ensure that these firms are running the best businesses possible. So when we were created, it was a group of owners of these firms that came together that, they kind of had a laptop and a dream with regard to starting a business, and they were really great engineers. And then some of them realized, hey, businesses are hard, and we need to come together and think about this. So what I love about CSI is this really collaborative spirit to come together and create standards to elevate the entire system integration industry. So it is our mission is to help, has been and is today, to help integrators run successful businesses. And our kind of showpiece event is our annual conference, which is going to be May 4th through 8th in Baltimore. And Brian will be speaking there. So we're delighted to hear from him and hear from Holden Advisors on advice regarding, if prices could talk, with talking about pricing, thinking about value, thinking about those sort of things. And we typically have around 500-600 attendees at that conference from the system integration world, either integrators themselves or the entities that in the ecosystem that support them. So it's a great event, but we also, as CSA, we run educational seminars, events where integrators can come together and talk through different problems. We offer a variety of different resources. Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah. And Tracy, as a member, what I've seen from Adrienne's group is really unique and nice because sometimes you're part of an association and people are only there to receive. It's like, teach me more so I can be better. And in my experience with CSIA, it's a group of people who are they're not really competing with each other. It's a lot of smaller, there's big guys, there's small guys. And it's everybody is there saying, this is what I've learned. Let me share it with you. Let's compare notes. Let's all get better together. And I feel like that's a really great environment.
Yeah, you bring that up, and that makes me think two things. One is when I came into this role, either the previous CEO or someone more internal to the organization told me that one of our kind of, I don't say tagline because we don't use it as a tagline, but one of the core principles of the association was you give one idea and you get 10 back.
Mm-hmm.
And as I've told others, I thought, well, that's cute, sort of. But I actually, as I started to travel the country and meet with integrators, that is what they repeated to me. And that has been the value of what they get. And part of that is driven by, I think, the uniqueness of the integration industry. As Brian noted, our membership, we have members who have over $1 billion in revenue. We have very large system integration companies, but the majority of our members are smaller firms, $5 to $40 million that really focus in on or at least start in a specific industry or a specific geographic region or the like. And that actually makes it easier for them to come together in a way and say, hey, this didn't work for me. What works for you? Or I'm in Detroit and you're in Miami, and I need to sort of connect with somebody to be able to deliver on this project. So tell me about your capabilities so that we can do that. So it does create this ethos of collaboration that I think, you're right. A lot of associations say, but it's harder to do. It's usually like, okay, I paid money and what do I'll take something from it. But we have
Right.
a really strong membership that wants to give back.
Yeah. And if everybody's a competitor, they're afraid of sharing trade secrets. I've been to financial services conferences where all the banks are just sitting there looking at each other because nobody
Right.
wants to give up the secret. And
Right.
and this is different because it's everybody just working to try to be better.
Yep. I agree.
So from your perspective, because you've got a unique kind of vantage point of working with a lot of different companies in this arena, what are the things that you notice that are like common themes that everybody's focused on this year?
As we're looking ahead at where the industry is going, um, I, I think that I could go on to any podcast and just say the word AI, and like that's going to be the answer to every question. So we do have a range of sessions at our upcoming conference that are related to both internally, how can system integrators think about using AI to run their businesses more successfully, but also they're dealing with large manufacturers. Where is that going? How do they prepare themselves to best serve their customers as well? So I think that's a critical point. I think with regard to your listening audience and the scope of this particular podcast, a lot of our integrators, traditionally integration had been project based. I need this. Can you put in this particular? I've got this batch of something that needs to be mixed. Help me wire this line together. Blah.
Mhm.
But the overall industry, the best business relationships are longer term partnerships where you really invest and understand each other. And that is where the integration industry is going. So establishing that, but also the life cycle needs and the ongoing kind of ongoing platform needs that are required related to that, I think is also, a shift that's happening.
Yeah, we've probably seen that with our clients as well, right, Brian?
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, in terms of AI, we see folks who are paralyzed
Hmm.
by the change and they're
Yeah.
not sure where this is headed. And the folks who are really struggling are the ones who say, oh, I'm going to wait for the dust to settle on this AI thing and then I'll jump in. It's like, gosh, you're too late.
Yeah.
You got to start moving forward now and start figuring it out, start trying it, um, start seeing what it can do for you, and then having the dialogue with your customers, having the dialogue internally, and just moving forward incrementally as best you can. It's what we're hearing from our clients is it's not a straight line.
Right.
You're not going to go from A to B. That's for sure. But if you know you want to go from A to Z, at least you're moving in the right direction, even if you bounce around a few letters in between, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah. In your experience of just being in this with members, can you think of stories or examples where things are really working? People are having some wins with AI and being able to work with companies kind of successfully in that area?
We actually had a webinar with one of the large integration firms just the past few weeks to really talk about how they are changing. They're looking ahead at manufacturing, and manufacturing is an area where there is going to be a lot of retirements and a lot of information lost over the course of time.
Mm.
And automation, it's not a nice to have, but a need to have for business continuity in some cases. And so this member of ours, Rovisis, had presented that they they were going into their customers and helping them think through the process because they would have engineers that would say, well, yes, we do this consistently each time the same exact way. And so then they'd watch them and be like, oh, well, but not in that time we actually, So they have used AI to capture the process and have it think through the process and create a repeatable structure there. And that those sort of actions both create are kind of historian. They create the background information that the business needs to remain successful, but also then helps the business to optimize the production.
Hmm. Adrienne, I'm wondering about how CSIA members think about their value. So I'm pretty confident that blocking and tackling, nuts and bolts,
Yep.
rice and beans, whatever you want to call it, that they feel pretty good about. I do these things for my customers, and I get paid for that. And
Yep.
I think they're probably pretty tight on that. How do they think about these additional value adds like you just described of I'm going to come in here and really help you understand how you do what you do, or I'm going to bring some subject matter expertise or benchmarking into this conversation? How do they think about that value that they bring?
I think the ones that are established and sophisticated, that is their future. That is the core of what they do. They look at the things that are, more repeatable and say, well, that's, we can do those. But if we can work with you to create a partnership that we're helping you think through where you want to take your business long term, that's the magic in the relationship. That is where you're going to get the most value out of working with system integration firms, probably working with anyone, is that if you have a true partner that you can collaborate with and trust, that you're able to, have those long-term conversations. That's where they can truly add value.
As you're working or kind of, talking with all these companies and leaders, have you found like common mistakes that a lot of people make as they're working to create these partnerships and sort of set up services and their value and things like that?
We closed the conference with a session called Lessons from Touching the Hot Stove. And it is integrators who are willing to sit up on stage in a moderated panel and talk about what went wrong and what they learned from it. And from those and past ones that I've read about, a really common mistake is documentation and clear expectations. I mean, it seems so simple, but it's one of those things, especially if you have a long-standing relationship or you have, more of handshake agreements, that you can have a conversation about something and then at the end of the day, oh, well, that's not what I meant. So I think one of the clear lessons is documents, just to make sure that everybody's on the same page.
Yeah.
We see that in pricing governance
Mhm.
too.
Yeah.
So you have a list price, you charge either whether it's by the hour, which as you know is not our favorite way to do things. We're going to talk about it at the conference. But whether you charge by the hour or by the project or by the outcome, however that plays out, you have some sort of list price. And then over time, particularly with these longer relationships, sometimes that list price erodes. It starts to discount. It's well, this was a one-off or this relationship or it's different or whatever. And you look back over time like you're describing, and it's like, wait a minute, why are these people paying half of whatever everybody else is paying? And they actually suck down more resources than others. Like, how do we get here?
Right. Right. It's an interesting angle also from, taking off my industry hat and putting on an association management hat as well, is you also have to be careful because you want to make sure that people contribute and collaborate and are involved in the association. And sometimes that can kind of slip into, well, they can come to the conference for free, or they can have this.
Mhm.
And not only is that, problematic from a revenue side, but it also then sets a wrong expectation among the whole community. And, in severe cases gets you into antitrust issues. But that, more it's, I think exactly what you're planning to speak about. You want to instead think about and reinforce, where are we offering value, and how do we price to that value and price to the value consistently and equitably?
Yes, and taking that a step further, people in the industry, whether they be members of CSIA or they're just, in an industry as customers buying from a systems integrator, they talk to each other and they say, "Oh yeah, I get this and this for free. You get that for
Right.
free."
Yeah.
And then another instance that we see a lot of times is you'll have two companies merge and somebody is paying 70% of what the other person's paying. Of course, it's the lowest common denominator. Whoever was paying more wants what the other guy had. And
Right.
pretty soon you had two customers and now you've got one big one and they're paying less than they should be.
Right.
Can you talk to us a little bit about like an example of a memorable negotiation that has stuck with you through the years?
So I spent my entire career in nonprofits, academia, and association. So that's the world I'm in, and I absolutely think you're leading on to our previous conversation. There's a lot of learning opportunities that one would have over the course of your career, where you're like, oh, I should not have done that, and I have, you you think you know how to negotiate because as a kid, okay, well, mommy gave me option A or B and I really want C, sort of like you do it. But there's a science and an art and a discipline to understanding what you're bringing. I think, the one of the formative lessons that I learned when thinking about negotiation, studying negotiation, is really being honest with yourself to understand what all you're bringing into a negotiation. Because if you're going into a room with someone and let's say you think it's simply about a price, but you really want that person to like you as well, or you've got things you really haven't thought and processed that factor in, you're going to be subconsciously going down a different path without understanding what is actually, not just my bat now, but like what am I negotiating here? What am I valuing? But to answer your question, I think one of the most memorable negotiations that I was in was just it was early in my career, and the circumstances related to it made it interesting in that you had mentioned the maps that I have. I have two maps behind me. They're both actually from New Zealand. I'm married to a New Zealander. The one on this way is centers the Pacific Ocean, which I think is cool, and the other one is upside down, shows New Zealand at the top of the world. But we lived in Auckland for a few years, and I worked for the University of Auckland. And at the time, the Ministry of Education really wanted to see more consolidation of educational institutions. They had proliferated in New Zealand. And so my role there was as a liaison between the University of Auckland and Faculty of Education and a teachers training college that was in Auckland as well. And the call to action was to do it in a way that everybody feels heard and all voices are really considered. And that balance is really hard to strike. And that was a very early on for me to listen and learn. And then, on top of it, I'm, a 20-something-year-old American that's coming into a culture that you think you could understand from the outside, but you don't understand any other culture unless you were living in it and you're in it, and you're studying the history and you're understanding all the players. So in the role, I was helping facilitate conversation between a range of different people, students and faculty, helping them develop policy for it, but also like the indigenous community in New Zealand and bringing them into the conversation. They are a critical part of any conversation in New Zealand in a way that doesn't happen in America. So learning, okay, what do I need to know? How do I function in this world to respect all the parties and make sure that they have voice to this negotiation as well was super interesting.
We
I
had
bet.
somebody, yeah, we had somebody on the podcast a few months ago that was like, people talk about negotiations as if there's like a winner and a loser. And there's so many myths around different things like that. Would be good to talk about that too. But anyway, in a lot of cases, like what you're talking about, there can't be somebody who like loses out. You've got to consider a lot of different perspectives. What's in it for me? There's so many different, especially with a lot of parties involved. That's an interesting one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that obviously is way more complex than the average business negotiation because you've got some real players and some real history there. What we see at a more simplified level is even within an organization, when we're part of a negotiation or coaching our client to go do the right thing, there are oftentimes engineers who have a stake in the negotiation. There are IT people who have a stake in the negotiation. There's procurement who's trying to keep them all organized and speak for everybody, but in most cases they don't. And it's not only what you described, which is, hey, let's try to find a win for all of these people. There's also a timing element to it.
Mm.
So I don't really necessarily have them all at the table at the same time. If I want to understand what's going to make the biggest difference for my client, the manufacturing uh, client, maybe I need to be talking to those engineers 9, 12 months before this negotiation and understand what really matters. And I have
Right.
to be talking to a line of business leader who says, look, this is where I want to be in 3 years. And understanding that and moving in that direction, improving our value in that time frame before we get to, okay, we have to work this out in the next month.
Well, and treating it as to the lecture you have this as much of an iterative process as possible because not everything is going to get revealed in the first conversation. And so if you have
Mm.
only a few conversations or one conversation, you're just not going to get all the information.
That's right. Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what it was like to go from the US to New Zealand and sort of adjust to the culture from a business perspective, working with, a different type, a different style, I would imagine. What was that like? What were some of the other things that you learned over there?
I think I learned a lot about listening, a lot about um, the world that I thought I knew, I needed to be quiet a bit more and listen and also appreciate, that there is not one right way to do things. There are many right ways to do things, and that can change depending on where you are. And that understanding did serve me well as I grew in my career and went to other countries with regard to with for work and really understanding high context, low context cultures, and that the way that I felt comfortable inside, what I needed the boxes to check wasn't the boxes other people need to check to have comfort level in those conversations as well. New Zealanders are pretty laid back people. The no worries mate is true. And they're pretty casual. But relationships are super important. It's a small country. And that sense of fairness, I think, is also very important to them. So yeah, making sure that I was listening, I think is like it was an early time in my career, so that was an early lesson.
Yeah. Yeah. The idea of also like being aware of how they might be listening to you is
Mm,
coming through to me. I feel like
right.
one of my first consulting projects pre-Holden was with an oil and gas company. They had 63 countries, like managers, directors, VP level across all of Europe, Russia, Caspian Sea. And it was like, people have preconceived notions about how Americans are. And in some cases, sometimes that includes like you believe that your way is the right way. And so when you're working across all these different cultures, especially for deals and new business, you have to sort of be aware of that and the mindset that you're speaking into at times. So that must have been interesting to navigate for sure.
I think it's also you walk through life almost like I'm picturing what movie was it? But like Free Guy is actually the movie I'm thinking of, where if you're in a role-playing game and you're a character, you're going to have all these other things around you, like, oh, here's how many like little stars they won, and so you've got things that are swirling around you, your person, that you don't see, but the people that are interacting with you see. You know, as an American, I'm carrying in, and it's like, okay, here's the history of everything that's related to your culture and your country and your particular identity that, you know, you have behind you, and you have to be mindful of those because they do affect a negotiation. They affect how you think, and so you have to carry that awareness, but also the awareness of the perception of the other person talking to you.
I
Yeah.
love that analogy. Yeah, I would assume that when even you, level-headed, measured, thoughtful Adrienne shows up, they're thinking, oh, she's the bull in the china shop. She's the
Yeah,
American that's going
could
to
be,
come in here
could
and be
be,
the
could
smartest
be.
person in the room and try to, just take over. Despite your style, that's maybe a preconceived notion.
Yeah, and it depends on, you know, each different arena that you walk into is going to have different people with different thoughts. And that I think also works, you know, keeping that mindset also works well for the work that I do with associations because truly, you know, the reason why I love the work that I do in association management is that if I can take a little tangent here, is it brings people together. That's our purpose is to bring people together. It may be on a specific topic like system integration, but there are fewer mechanisms to bring people together now. And so being able to drive that and to create something bigger than yourself, I think is really cool. You do that by making sure that you're being, you know, for your particular mission, you're being as inclusive as possible so that you're hearing what people are saying and aren't saying, and so that you can adapt to that. Like one of my previous member participants had this really insightful LinkedIn post he made recently. He is sight impaired and he was talking and he's doing accessibility work for Schneider Electric. I don't remember his title, but he's super great guy who is very, very thoughtful. So every time he speaks, I learn something from him. He he was talking about how ATMs, for example, people will make fun of, oh, there's Braille on the ATM. And ha ha ha, it's a cheap joke. Which I always thought it was like, oh, well, if you have somebody in the back seat, you want to give them their agency to be able to do something. But, you know, okay. But he was like, actually beyond that. It's a service that someone's thinking about, okay, there's an autonomous vehicle that's going to be coming up. We're going to be changing, the world's going to be changing. And is the infrastructure in place to be able to support that? And I thought, wow, that's so insightful with regard to the work associations do and businesses, honestly. Can we think ahead to where our customers are going to be inclusive, to make sure that we have the infrastructure that's needed to make sure that we're bringing as many of them in or on board as possible?
That's very cool.
Yeah, very interesting.
I like that. As you talk with members and get ready for the conference, what are the things that you're most excited about just in the industry as people are looking to innovate and create new things for their own companies?
That, you know, that's the cool thing about doing association work in this industry is what we see is people solving real problems. It is, you know, it is both scary and cool to see where AI can be applied. We are may have mentioned that we've got a workforce, you know, pipeline issue in manufacturing. And so as they're thinking about how to solve that, it's trying to empower the people that are there with more information and more ways to do things. So I think that is very cool. You know, on a very short term level, the conference we have in just under 2 months' time that Holden Advisors will be a part of. We've got over 30 system integrators that will be presenting. What we've tried to do is have system integrators educate other integrators and provide solutions. Okay, I did this and I'm going to teach you about it. So that is, I think that's really cool in the ethos of the organization. Excited about that. We've got Dan Heath, who's a well-known business leader, speaking as a keynote on the conference, and just a range of other things. So that, yeah, that the conference is what I'm short-term excited about, but I think long-term, we've got a lot of technology that can make people's lives better if we keep that in mind, to try to serve the most people possible.
Yeah, keeping the intent pure of the membership. That's great. Good.
Right.
Brian, what am I missing? Topics you want to cover?
Well, I wanted to ask you about there's a lot going on in the world today. Sort of an
One or two things.
understatement there, So we've got, to name a few, tariffs, international conflict, inflation, and systems integrators are in the middle of that.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering if you could speak to either the challenges that they're facing due to these things, and or I'd love to hear also how they're helping their customers navigate these really unique times.
Yeah, anyone in manufacturing is going to be touched by, anyone anywhere is touched by uncertainty, but certainly with regard to manufacturing, the uncertainty that's been introduced over the past, few years it has made it harder to plan. And we have seen some pipeline cycles related to that where projects that had been agreed to are like, well, maybe not today. You
Right.
come back next week and all that.
Yeah.
So that does cause challenges. We routinely survey our membership. They're a part of we do a monthly check-in, it's kind of a CEO confidence index, a quarterly business health survey we do in an annual salary survey. But the more frequent surveys we're seeing, things most recently seem to be leveling out a little bit. I think, to answer your second question, it's really related to if you have these partnerships, if you're treating business as you're finding valued suppliers, or in system integrators would be suppliers in this instance. You're finding value suppliers that you're creating a long-term relationship with. They can help you solve these problems. If you're looking at everything as transactional, then your boat's going to get rocked by bigger waves.
Yeah. And include the system integrator in your planning.
Correct.
Don't do all the planning and then say, okay, I need somebody to fulfill on this. Bring the system integrator in as a thought partner, like you're describing. Have them part of that planning, and they can help you like, hey, let's fix this problem today. And next year we need to move in this direction. And 3 years from now, we need to be in this place. And let me help get you there.
Yep.
Yeah, I see that as a really valuable role that they can play, provided the manufacturer is thoughtful about bringing somebody in and sharing their ideas with them. I think that could make all the difference in the world.
I'm going to put you on stage and have you say that.
Yes, and then with all of that value, well, let's make sure that the system integrator is compensated for being the great one that
Correct.
helps them fix today, fix tomorrow, fix 3 years from now, instead of just the transactional person that can turn some screws and connect wires and just do that part. Important, but not as important and not as valuable as that next level, which a lot of your members are doing.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense.
Well said. Adrienne, thank you for joining us. Thank you both
My
for doing
pleasure.
this.
For
Yes.
sure. Yeah. Adrienne, thanks for being here. I've learned a lot. So this is awesome.
I've listened to your podcast, was delighted to join in, and I am looking forward to hearing your presentation at the CSIA conference in May in Baltimore.
Great. Thank you. I'm looking forward to it.
Love it. All right. Thank you both. See you soon.